Welcome back to the Structure to Grow podcast. I'm Brad, and I'm joined by my co-host Ryan. Ryan, how you doing, man?
Doing pretty good.
Ryan, you are like the most even-keeled person I know. He is always like he's always at like a 7, like
My,
happy, like not down, happy, but also like not jumping up and down. And I get so excitable all
I'll
the
tell you
time.
that is one of the things probably my wife like hates the most about me is she's like I need more out of you. Give me more emotion. Give me more. I'm like, no, like everything's good. The rainy day here in Seattle and just kids are at school and one's in watching some cartoons. So
Yeah,
all's
Ryan, I
good.
imagine that you move in like about like a half a step increment up and down.
Yeah, probably.
So today we're excited. We have got a an awesome guest for you, Joel Wright from Fold a Tank. Did I say that right?
Yes. Yep.
Okay,
Exactly.
from Fold a Tank, a product I was not familiar with until recently, but it is very cool, and I think it's new. So if anybody's watching this, I'm imagining you're not from the industry they came from. So this is probably a totally new concept, or it was to me, and I imagine it is to you. So we're going to dive into that. Joel, thanks for joining us today. Thanks for hopping on and having a chat.
Oh, glad to be here, Brad. Thanks for having me.
So we'll just start at the basics because I think we've got to kind of give some point of reference what we're talking about. What is Fold a Tank? What are we even talking about here?
Sure. Fold a Tank has a really cool story from the beginning, and it was Grandpa Eldred. So you have to know that 3 generations of Eldreds ran the company before I came in. And Grandpa Eldred was a banker, and one of his clients was a fire truck refitter. And he was in the bank often, borrowing money and talking about how rural firefighters never have enough water at the fire scene. And the solution at that time, and this is in the mid 50s, was firefighters would take 4 ladders off of the truck, tie them together in a square, and throw a tarp in the middle, and that was their auxiliary water reservoir. And so then they'd have a tanker truck, going to the river or going to town and hooking up at a hydrant, filling up, coming back and dumping water in this homemade tank. And took a long time to deploy and put away. And so Grandpa Eldred turned from banker to garage welder, and he decided to make one of these things that collapsed like his daughter's playpen, and it folded up to be the same size as a ladder on the truck, so he could easily put it back in the same space on the fire truck that the ladders were in. And so that's how it would get to the fire scene. And when it got to the fire scene, instead of pulling 4 ladders off individually and doing all that work, you could just pull it off the truck and open it up like the playpen and dump water in it, and you're ready to go. So
Very
that
cool.
was the original concept. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have been recently, sorry, Ryan, I've been
okay.
recently introduced to this whole rural firefighting thing. So we moved way out into the country last year. And at the front of our property, there's a farm pond. And we moved in, we noticed there's a sign at the pond, and it's a water point for the rural fire department. And so a couple of weeks ago, they were out here for the first time running their, I guess it's twice annually, as I think they told us. They come out and they practice pumping water out of the pond into the tank. And, so the guys get, have familiarity with these access points. But because I'd always lived in town where there's fire hydrants. So I'd never had considered that this was something that was like a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm assuming like infrastructure wise, nothing has changed since the beginning, right? It's there's still issues that, like Brad, you even said at your house, or like this is farmland. There's just no access, or is it something that like is even on the radar of like anyone in the government? Of like, hey, we've got an issue, or is it, hey, we've got a solution now. Let's just let them continue putting your tanks out, and or is that a problem or a worry at all for you guys down the road of like, okay, now what happens if they put fire hydrants everywhere? Are we gonna lose some of our market, or is that even in the question?
Well, it's not so much of a concern, I think, because of how
Mm.
expensive infrastructure is. And you
Mm.
can imagine what it would take to get a fire hydrant and the line to it to
Mm.
every point that's out there. So I don't think that's a big threat to our market. But, as you bring up what's the motivation, what keeps this market alive,
Mm.
it's really, every community has an ISO rating, which is determined by the insurance industry. And so, Brad, your home insurance rates are tied to your fire protection district's ISO rating. And so if it's a 10, like you were right in town and there were fire hydrants, at every corner,
Hmm.
your insurance rates would presumably be lower than if you're way out in the country and your fire protection district's ISO rating is a 3. And, that score is determined by how well the fire department can get water to all the different potential fire hazards in the district. And certainly that pond in front of your house is a key part of their ISO rating, no doubt.
Right. Hopefully that means that I have not checked this and I do not know this information, but I'm hoping mine is reasonably high. The pond is not that far away. I mean, it's only 500 or 600 feet away from the house. So surely with the water source, we're getting some benefit to that. So I guess the word just spread. Was it a grassroots growth for the company from like fire, or did he like go around and take these tanks? Like, how did he go from helping a local client to kind of growing this out? Because I assume all rural fire departments need access to something like this.
Sure. Yeah, I don't know all of the ways that, the product eventually got traction, but certainly word of mouth is a big part of it. And, the Fold the Tank name is kind of unique and it's very well known in especially the volunteer firefighting community.
Okay.
Um, and so, even our competitors' tanks are oftentimes called folded tanks. And,
Mm-hmm. Yes.
and you can imagine over the decades, there have been some folks that have copied those, the designs
Mm.
and there's competition in the marketplace now too.
Well,
Yeah, I guess
that's
that.
what you want, though, right? Is your name to be like ubiquitous with the product, like Q-tip or whatever other examples there are of people start to refer to you, and then you've got the original, you've got the real one. I could see that being a huge benefit to.
For
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
We because we talked a lot, so I helped a new product launch into the pressure washing industry a few years ago, and we talked a lot about competition and people copying us, and ultimately decided that I think for a new product, direct competition or people creating a similar product, to us at least, we saw as a benefit, because not only does it get the idea out there, more people know that, hey, there's these tanks available, and then they're going to start researching them and finding out more. But it also, yeah, added to our credibility of saying, hey, we've made this product, now everyone's copying it, so you can see the benefit. You can see how it's a credible product and not just something that we're taking a flyer on and hoping it's going to work.
Yep.
I don't know if either of you guys are familiar with Simon Sinek's work, but he talks about having a worthy adversary, and that every leader, every business kind of needs that counterpart. It creates that benchmark, that frame of reference in people's mind about how to measure something. And it's like Apple needed Microsoft as much as Microsoft needed Apple for that to grow. And I think that's probably true in a lot of things. So with you had talked to us a little bit before we started recording and shared that so you've been with the company a few years. How did you get involved with the company, and maybe share a little bit about your background and kind of what drew you to something like this?
Sure. So I'm an engineer by education, and I've always been involved in companies that manufacture a branded product. And prior to joining the firefighting industry, I was in the traffic signal industry. And prior to that, I was in the commercial baking industry. And so had a whole bunch of experiences, bringing products to market. And when I was transitioning from the traffic signal industry into this industry, it was a banker friend of mine that had been working with the owners of this company on selling the business, and he introduced me to it. And long story short, after a couple starts and stops, the whole thing transitioned very quickly, and in like a matter of 2 months' time, all the papers were signed, and I bought the business with a partner of mine who we actually worked together in the traffic signal industry, and have known each other for a long time.
So I'm interested, just for fun. What were you like designing new equipment in the traffic signal industry? Is that a big thing? I mean, I don't know. I feel like my knowledge of that is so limited. As is the idea of a branded product or bringing it to market.
Sure. I was not the designer. I was the CEO of this company, and it was a couple hundred people, and it was spread out over the United States. So my responsibilities, were not so product specific. But what I loved about the traffic industry was I could drive around any community, in the country and appreciate, whether it was our equipment or somebody else's, how it worked. And, so many things like traffic signals we all take for granted until you dive into them and you figure out what it really takes to make that stuff work. And there is a fascinating amount of technology that's, been developed and is being integrated into infrastructure at a lot slower rate than the technology is developing. It just takes communities a long time to afford and adapt to all that change. And so the technology might be here, but the funding and the ability to accept it is way down here. So it is a new industry.
Can I ask you a question? Maybe I was hoping maybe hearing that now, and I don't think my wife will probably ever listen to this, but I might have to pull this clip out and make her listen to it if I'm right. But if not, then I'm going to delete it out of the recording. But are you able to settle an argument for me? And this may be something you may not know.
Going.
So if you were at a red light and you flash your high beams at it, is it more likely to change? Is that something or is that a total myth that is made up?
That's a myth.
Okay, that's a good.
I've never heard this myth.
Oh yeah, no. We'll get to a red light at night, and it will be sitting there for like a minute or two. She's like, "Oh, just flash the lights," because the idea is, okay, a fire truck comes in, they have their lights flashing. It has a sensor, sees the lights, and it changes. But no, that's good to hear. So I am on the winning side of that one. So that would be one out of all the arguments we've ever had that maybe I can win.
You just can't light the lights fast enough to make the sensor that really is there for the fire trucks work. It's a different frequency, and you can't do that manually.
I did not
have an emitter, and there is probably a receiver up by the lights that will detect that a quarter mile or a half mile back and turn the light green. So they call that emergency vehicle preemption. And so when they're trying to get to the scene fast, whether it's a fire or an ambulance, the infrastructure is there to help them get there safely. Yeah.
How ubiquitous is that technology? Is that pretty much everywhere you go now, or because I didn't even know it existed. Honestly, I had no idea.
It's pretty common. Yeah.
It's definitely fascinating, and I am fascinated.
Yeah, so I'm getting us off the rails.
It's actually good because I think this is an interesting question. I know, and we'll get back to talking about like what's next for Fold a Tank, but I am very interested. So you were involved with a company that was bringing commercial baking equipment, correct, to market and running that and traffic. How does it differ in a go-to-market activities for something that, to me, commercial cooking type equipment is something that's very marketable, right? Like individuals, companies are making these decisions. They're looking for the right brand name. There's brand recognition that goes on in this space because it's a commercial type thing. Versus, I'm imagining traffic lights. Those decisions are made by municipalities or communities or whatever. How is the go-to-market activities different from one to another? Because I imagine it's a totally different world of interacting and marketing. It's like you don't run commercials on TV for traffic lights, right?
No, no, we never made this Super Bowl commercial.
Right, right.
Never got that one. Selling to government funded agencies, whether it's a volunteer fire department or a city that's going to put in a traffic signal, is a long sales cycle, and there are lots of decision makers and lots of decision influencers. So what's important there is educating all the different people in that decision making group on the products and the technology and the benefits and so forth. And then what you do when you're savvy is get your product spec'd so that you can weed out your competition. That the government agencies are pushing back against that all the time, and so they try and write open specs, and so you just try and get in front of big projects, whether it's building a fire truck or building a fleet of fire trucks, or a city that's going to put in a new road, or turn a 2-lane road into a 6-lane road with all kinds of traffic lights on it. Getting in front of those projects so that the folks that are making decisions are educated on what you can bring to the solution. That's how things are sold in that world, and that's really what the Fold-A-Tank world is like. Selling commercial baking equipment, when you sell to private industry, its decisions are faster, and as people change, you have to keep up with the changes. But similar kind of education process. It's just the decision making is a lot more concentrated.
Right, right. I find that very fascinating. Is there a level of, because you talked about in industries where you can sell a branded product. I mean, obviously, amongst the firefighting community, you have a product that is very brandable and recognizable. Does that exist in the traffic signal industry? I mean, is there a level of brand recognition that a local decision maker would be aware of?
Yes, for certain products,
Okay.
there definitely is.
Okay.
And a lot of it runs on software too that isn't always as interoperable as everyone would like. So, there are ways to build in brand loyalty because it takes so much effort to learn the software, and then the people that are using it, maintaining the equipment, don't want to change. So
Yeah. That is definitely a truth across all customer bases. A resistance to change, especially in like things people use every day, like software. It's funny. I see it in all these industries. Like once you get a company or a person using something like that in their day to day, it's very sticky, very, very sticky.
Yep.
So we talked a little bit about, the Fold-A-Tank has been very successful in the volunteer and rural firefighting world, which I imagine that's a lot of overlap because a lot of rural firefighting is volunteer firefighting. What's kind of the thought process of expanding outside of that? What other opportunities are you guys exploring that you'd like to share and talk about?
Well, we just introduced a product that helps firefighters fight electric vehicle fires, which are very different than traditional fuel vehicle fires. And what happens is a battery, which electric vehicles are powered by these individual battery cells that look like C-size cells. And there are a whole bunch of them in a battery compartment in the car or truck. And say one of them gets damaged and starts burning. and that lithium ion battery is going to burn until the fuel runs out. And there's really nothing much that anybody could do to put that fire out. So you got to let it burn out. And as it's burning out, it's generating all kinds of heat, and it's igniting batteries that are packed in that battery compartment right adjacent to it. Mm-hmm. And so that process is called thermal runaway. And the tank that we recently brought to market is a variation of the old Fulda tank, but it wraps around the vehicle, so you don't have to move this vehicle when it's on fire. And you can fill it with water, but since it's a wraparound, it also doesn't have a full floor, and it holds water. And so essentially what you do is you take the tank to the scene, where this fire is taking place. You're going to want to knock down the tires and the interior, the plastics that are burning. But then you wrap this tank around it, fill it up with water, and let it soak there while the 1 cell or the 10 cells that are on fire burn out, and make sure that they don't cause thermal runaway and make all the cells burn. And what firefighters tell us, that the use cases that are really important for an application like this are things like parking garages where there's a building above, in urban settings, and parking ramps where they could ignite neighboring vehicles. So we have a few of them out there. We just got it patented, so we protect some of the work that we've done over the last year, and that's something new that we just brought to the market. But that's around firefighting. So,
I've heard you see a lot of sensational media about these electric car fires, and I'm a big ICE, internal combustion engine guy. I'm a car nut, so I subscribe to all the media that's a little bit anti the change, so I probably see my fair share of all that. How big of a problem is this really? I mean, you're getting feedback from fire departments. Is this something that's like a real concern in the electric car world, or is it something that's being sensationalized?
From the firefighter's perspective, it's not sensationalized at all, because they don't have the tools that they need to fight these types of fires, and they can see the data that electric vehicles are becoming more and more popular. And, while it's at single-digit percentages right now, they can deal with it, and the number of, potential disasters are minimal. But, once it gets to the 20 or 30% of the market is electric vehicles, it's going to happen more. And it's those use cases that I mentioned, like an underground parking garage. An EV fire starts there, catches several other cars and, stuff on fire. Next thing you know, you can have a whole building that's on fire. So the firefighting community is concerned and is anxiously looking for a tool that can be easy to deploy and works.
I mean, it makes sense, and we're definitely headed down a road that, as far as we can see, it is going to be legislated that cars are moved to electric cars. Like EVs are the future as far as the legislators are concerned worldwide. So I can see, even if that problem is still small now in those urban environments where they're adopted at a higher rate, as things change, it's going to be like they're going to represent a majority of the vehicles on the road.
Yeah.
Very, very interesting. So the other industry, the one that we know about that you guys are kind of entering into is into the exterior cleaning, pressure washing, maintenance industry. I know we talked about it from a little bit different perspective. So not necessarily the residential cleaning industry, but people who are doing commercial industrial type cleaning. What's kind of the story there? What are you guys doing? What opportunities did you see? And I'm very interested in the innovation.
Sure. So our predecessors did a little bit of work in the spill containment, and that would be part of a bigger umbrella that would include pressure washing industry. And we were building some products for Greg Sprunk at Superior Cleaning Equipment in Phoenix. And I was talking to him on the phone one day and said, hey, I get these magazines and there's this CETA organization and I think that's a good one. Should I join? There's probably more business there than we know about since we've been so focused on the firefighting markets. And he said, oh yeah, CETA is a great organization and I'm the membership chair. So you should definitely join.
Yeah.
So we did, and we're going to be at the show next week and exhibiting a variation of the folding frame tank that the firefighters use, and something that we've seen people use to clean greasy, oily equipment. And it's basically a 3-sided tank that you can put something big in, like an engine block or a valve, and pressure wash it. And it contains all of the fluid and the oils so they can be reclaimed and captured, dealt with outside of the, stuff spilling on the ground.
So you see this, and I'm just trying to, imagine what you're sharing being used most in the field, heavy equipment, heavy commercial type settings. Is that kind of what the thought process is?
Yes, that, because of it, these tanks are portable. They fold up like a ladder, like we talked about on the fire truck, and so they're easy to move around, so they can be taken into the field and deployed quickly, or industrial settings. But in areas where whatever you are cleaning, you're not allowed to just let that stuff drain off and go into the ground. You need to contain it and take care of it. It's that kind of a pressure washing situation or a spill containment situation that's what we're trying to solve for. So I look forward to meeting people that, do this every day and, would welcome a portable, easy to move around solution for that, as opposed to moving the heavy equipment to a permanent washing facility. So,
do you guys,
Ryan, you were thinking?
Yeah, no, I was just curious. Like, do you guys have somebody in house who is like familiar with the industry and said like, hey, this is a hole I see that we can fill? Or was that talking through connections, or was it like what is the makeup of like the Fold-A-Tank team look like, to whereas you thought, hey, here's a product where we can go, here's another market, here's a problem, we think we can solve it. How did that like come about? Or was it simply, hey, our connection to the industry said this is something we could use, so we built it?
Sure. So the people at Fold-A-Tank are primarily manufacturing and engineering driven folks and marketing driven folks. And so we talk a lot internally about what's our customer discovery process, and we intentionally speak to distributors or other equipment manufacturers in different industries, and just trying to ask open-ended questions about what problems do they see that don't have good solutions. And sometimes you kind of have to egg them on, like, okay, if it's portable and you can easily move it around and take the equipment to the site, do you have solutions for that? And that was really how we stumbled into making the decision to go to CETA and speak to more manufacturers and distributors that know this industry inside and out. So I think our personality is we are great manufacturers and we are good marketers. We'd like to be great marketers, but today I'd say we're good. And, we just love solving problems that haven't been solved before. And, whether that's for a firefighter or for, somebody who is trying to protect the environment and get all the equipment clean so that it lasts longer, we get a charge out of being able to solve those problems and build something that works for them. One thing that I appreciate about our founders and our predecessors is the culture that they ingrained in the company and in the designs of our products. Really emphasize durability, because the firefighters are not, their adrenaline is sky high, and when they go to use our stuff, they are not being gentle with it at all. Fast, it's got to last, and a lot of our stuff is 20, 30 years old in the firefighting industry. So portable, really durable solutions, we inherited a lot of that, which is neat. And having a good process for customer discovery and figuring out what kinds of problems people need solved, that's what I feel like some of the newer folks that have joined the company since we acquired it have brought to the table.
Now, Ryan, you can correct me if I'm wrong with this, but I would have to say that the washing industry is also a group of people who are not so gentle as well.
I would say yes, but for a completely different reason. I think you can lose drop all the adrenaline and all the we need this working right this second, right now, and more of hey, I'm just going to throw this back in my truck because I want to deal with it right now, and I can hope when I pull it back out, it still works.
Yeah,
but I think no, it's just funny. It's I was thinking the exact same thing. I think they are certainly, the industry as a whole is a lot I don't think I'm friends with anybody who's going to take offense to this, but I think the industry as a whole is filled with people who are not fit for corporate jobs is probably how I describe it. And I think most of them who are in that would agree. But most of them go into business for themselves because they probably could not work for somebody else. But you'll certainly get the mix of guys who there are some who take really good care of their equipment. They want it. They're worried. They clean it. They do everything they can to make sure that every time everything is back in the same spot in the same order. But I would say 95% of the guys probably at the end of the job take their stuff, throw it in the back of the truck, and drive home. And I'll clean it this weekend, or I'll clean it next month, or whatever it is. But yeah, very rough on equipment. And so I think having a product that they can use that is going to stand up to a lot of that would be huge. And especially if you guys are used to firefighters dragging tanks across highways and on roads and all the rough terrain that I'm sure they have to deal with, then it can certainly hold up to, I think, the industry uses that we see in the pressure washing world too.
Yep. Well, that's good to know. Maybe a little different why, but
They both spray water, so right.
Yeah.
Well,
we just wanted to make sure that we were sharing some insight for you, in this conversation of some kind.
Yeah.
Joel, I want to highlight something that I've heard you reiterate. It seems like it's a guiding principle, and I respect it a lot. And is the idea that you are always following the problem. And a phrase that we've adopted is, love the problem, not the product. And I believe that when companies are really focused on the problems of their clients, they'll get the rest of it right. It's solving those problems is the big thing. And I like that you guys are focused on that. And I just wanted to repeat it because I think there's a lot of wisdom that anybody can hear with that, is that when you follow the problem, it will lead you to bringing the right product, the right service, the right solution to the marketplace, because that's what people pay for, right? Is the help in solving the problem that they're struggling with, or is costing them money, or et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, well, thanks for pointing that out. In a lot of ways, it feels like common sense to us, because if we spend all of our time developing things that we think are cool but nobody wants, it's hard to make money and hard to get money to invest in the next one. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, and I'm sure that's what makes you guys successful too. Is I would assume the firefighters who use it, when you've got a wildfire out in Eastern Washington, or California, or whatever, and you want the firefighters to have full confidence in the product, and not, you don't want them to show up to fight a fire and be like, all right, well, let's hope the tank holds up this time. Like the last three didn't work out, so maybe this is the one. But yeah,
Right.
if you are focusing on their needs and their problem, and I think adapting, and it sounds like this is what you guys do, is adapt to the changing environment, the changing need for something to put out electric vehicle fires, and listening to your customer, and creating your plan of growth based on their needs instead of your kind of ideal of where we should go. Then ultimately I think you're always going to see success, and I'm assuming that's why you guys have been so successful in your industry. So I personally look forward to it. Like I'm tangentially still attached to the pressure washing industry, but that's been my world for the last 12 years or so. And so I'm personally like super excited to hear you guys like wanting to enter in and bring in that same kind of viewpoint into that industry, because I think it certainly needs it. There's a lot of guys who make products because they think it might be cool, and not really listening to what the contractors actually need.
Well, I have to tell you, it's a big reward when we're at a trade show or we have a firefighter, come to our factory and take a tour. And when they tell us, that thing that you changed or that you made really worked, and here's my situation, that's a huge reward, and it's really easy for me to come back when I experience those things and share it with the team here. And we get a lot of joy out of people saying they liked what we did, whether they buy it or,
Yeah.
buying it's one thing, but I suppose we're all at heart, eager to please.
Mm-hmm. And now, do you guys do like? Sorry, Brad. It sounds like you're. That's it. I was gonna say, but do you guys do like training, and like where is like education fit in the world, this world for you guys? Like, do you bring in firefighters and train them on your products, or do you go out to see them, or how do you? Yeah, how do you? In bringing a new product to somebody, how do you educate them on how to use it and the best uses for it?
Yeah, that's a bit of a challenge for us. Just in the United States, there are 30,000 fire departments.
Mm.
And so for us to be at that many of them is pretty hard. And most volunteer fire departments have, training or a meeting pretty much every week. They have their evenings or, a time during the weekend when they all meet, and they might do, some kind of health and safety training one week and, shuttling water the next week. So we collaborate with some training companies that will get 10 fire departments together for a whole weekend of training, and we put out a bunch of how-to videos on YouTube, and they're all made with our mobile phones. It's nothing fancy, but that's how we've been able to disseminate information so far. And
Okay.
it'd be interesting to see how if this EV tank gains popularity, how we have a few at some of the regional training centers right now. And, we're anxious to get some feedback from them as they begin incorporating that into their classwork and their field work. We'll see how it all goes, but it's tough for a business of, our size to get to 30,000 points in the U.S. and, who knows how many worldwide. So we have to use a lot of digital tools too.
That is the amazing part about the changes in how we connect and communicate now. It's much more approachable than it was 50 years ago, or in the 50s when this whole thing got started, right? Sharing the word about a product was a whole different ballgame than now. Like you said, a cell phone and some YouTube videos, and really anybody could find, see, learn, and explore it. And I think that that's a huge advantage, especially in a product and a company like like Fold a Tank.
Yeah. Very powerful stuff.
Well, Joel, I appreciate it. Ryan stole my thunder. I wanted to tell you that, and I can't let it go. So I'm going to tell you, my father always told me, while that may be common sense is not always common. So and I think that is the true. And that's one of the reasons I think it's worth repeating some of these things. Yeah, it is common sense to follow the problem, but that doesn't mean that it's always how people operate. And I think some of these principles just need to be reiterated because they need to be practiced. But I look forward to meeting you next week in person and checking out your stuff at the CETA booth. Obviously you can meet Joel and his team there at CETA next week if you happen to catch this. Ryan, we'll get this episode out this week. I'm sure you can get that taken care of.
Yep.
How else can somebody find out more about Fold a Tank and learn more? Where do they need to go, Joel?
Well, I would say we have a website, www.foldatank, and that's with dashes in the middle, fol-da-tank.com. And we have a Facebook page and Instagram and some stuff that I don't know about, but all the social media stuff. And there are some pretty good how-to videos on YouTube that the guys that put that together had a blast, and their closing line is "Tanks for watching." So you might go out and find a few of those videos, but otherwise, give us a call. We'll answer the phone live. We'd love to talk to you and understand what the problems are.
Still the best way to communicate, right? Just pick up the phone and have a chat. Well, thanks again for hopping on and sharing this with us. It's a very fascinating business. There's obviously a lot of needs in different industries, and I look forward to watching and seeing where you guys know now that we're aware of you.
All right. Well, thank you guys for having me on. It was a pleasure to speak to you, and I look forward to meeting you at CETA next week, Brad, and maybe I'll see you there next time, Ryan.
Yeah, at some point, I'm sure.
All right. Take care, guys.
All right. Thank you.